Hi guys and welcome to China Perspectives. My name is 𝗻𝗵𝗿 and you may know me as the German recruiter in Asia. I recently had a conversation that really shows why the global industrial map is shifting in favor of China. So what happened is I was speaking with the CEO of a like 500 million euro annual revenue European manufacturing company, right? And they were looking for a general manager here in China, but not for a new sales office. They are relocating a massive portion of their European manufacturing hub directly here to China. And when I asked him why, he didn't just talk about labor cost and local supplier base and the local consumer market. He pointed to one thing. He said energy prices. While the West debates and delays and prices for energy increase, especially with the recent wars driving up prices more and more, Beijing is executing a national energy powerhouse strategy in order to continue building an industrial backbone that is not only giving its own firms a leg up, but also attracting more and more global firms to expand their operations here. And why? Well, to make stuff you need energy, and the prices of energy matter a lot for a company and how they set their prices. This is why today I want to speak about nuclear energy in China. Let me know in the comments how you feel about nuclear energy in your country. Is it a risk for the population in case something goes wrong, or is it a safe and green way to create more energy and keep costs in check? The main global nuclear players today include Rosatom from Russia, China National Nuclear Corporation, CNNC, China General Nuclear, CGN, EDF or Framatome from France, Westinghouse Electric Company, and 𝗵𝗵𝗰𝗄𝗃 Nuclear Energy from the United States, and Japan Partnership Ecosystem, as well as Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power from South Korea. So in short, to be successful in this very difficult and very sensitive industry, you need a really powerful state to back you up. And China is a very powerful state. So if you look at the global energy map in 2026, there's a clear trend in East Asia. While large parts of the West are still debating climate targets, permitting processes, lawsuits, and whether nuclear is politically acceptable at all, China is simply building and building and building. And this is not just about electricity, it's about industrial policy, long-term planning, energy security, supply chains, and in the end of the day, it's about who will control large parts of the future energy system and therefore also be attractive to manufacturing companies, which in turn bring jobs that help the general population. And what's interesting about China and energy is that this is a lot less, let's say, morally debated. From what I see, nuclear is simply one source in the greater mix of energy. And despite all the headlines, nuclear power still only accounts for somewhere 4 or 5% of China's electricity generation today. Coal is still king despite the huge push for clean energy and less environmental pollution we have seen in the last decade, and which China takes very, very seriously. Solar and wind are exploding, and yet Beijing still sees nuclear as absolutely strategic and continues to build it out. And of course, nuclear energy is not a new concept. China's nuclear story did not start because Beijing wanted green electricity. It started Beijing wanted, well, survival at first and options for defending itself. So in the Cold War years, nuclear meant a bomb, strategic deterrence and national sovereignty. For decades, this was not really that much a commercial industry, but instead it was a military scientific ecosystem hidden deep inside the state apparatus. But then China did something we now see over and over and over again in many industries. It invited foreign firms into its country and sent its own people out into the big wide world, both with the same targets. Learn and ideally learn from the best and bring the knowledge home and apply it here. In the 1980s and 1990s, projects like Qinshan and Days Bay were not just about generating just power. China imported foreign know-how from France, from Canada, from Russia, and also, yes, from the United States. And so what China did was invite the projects and invite, the foreign firms, used it as a learning field. They studied the manufacturing process, the standards, the project management, the industrial organization behind it, everything that you need. We could say they did not just buy the reactor, they bought the method. And this is still one of the most underestimated things about China. There's a common idea that China just copies but doesn't innovate. And I have an entire video about why this is wrong, and actually innovation is happening across so many industries. The easiest you all know is e-vehicles, right? So the common self-understanding in China back then was that China is a student and learning from the teacher from the West. But the common self-understanding in China today has drastically changed, and it doesn't see itself as a student anymore. And this may also help foreigners understand why there's a shift in attitude, in communication, and in the mindset, which is a lot more assertive nowadays, and rightfully so, by the way. So after the early stages for foreign firms entering the country, then came the 2000s. China's energy demand exploded at a speed the world has never really seen before. Entire cities appeared almost overnight. I literally would blink my eyes and look at the horizon and mutter to myself, I'm pretty sure that building wasn't there yesterday. I have a video about China's speed, which I will also link for you below. Heavy industry expanded massively in those years, and I mean massively. First, the international ones who wanted to develop the local market, then also the Chinese firms here who started to catch up. Infrastructure construction went into hyperdrive and powered the incredible GDP growth, keeping in mind that this infrastructure and construction make a huge part of the GDP in China. Pollution became a serious political problem. People become much more aware of the pollution index, which you can now see on, most phones and most weather apps. And it started actually out as an informal measure in an international school back in Beijing, where one of the foreign parents set up a particle measure machine from work, and then the parents would decide on that day if the kids could go outside during that specific day during lunch break and to play. The general population became first aware and then concerned about their health, and Beijing knew it had to step in. At the same time, Beijing realized something else. Coal was both the foundation of the economy and a strategic vulnerability. So no, China didn't just decide to go green just for the health of people in nature. What China actually decided was something like, we need multiple large-scale energy systems at the same time. Coal, hydro, solar, wind, nuclear, UHV transmission, battery storage, everything at the same time in huge capacities. And this is important because China does not think about energy the way many Western countries do. Beijing doesn't really think in terms of one system replacing another system. It thinks in terms of stacking systems on top of other systems. And then came Fukushima in 2011. I remember it well. I actually had been on the phone with a Chinese candidate in Japan just earlier that day, and then the news started to come in. After the disaster in Japan, China temporarily paused approvals for new reactors, conducted nationwide safety reviews, and became much, much more cautious about inland nuclear projects. This is one of the reasons why most Chinese nuclear plants today are concentrated along the coastline. But more importantly, China did not abandon nuclear. It just reviewed and recalibrated and then accelerated again. So in 2025 alone, China approved 10 new reactor units worth around 200 billion yuan in investment. To help you put that into perspective, this is not a normal infrastructure program. This is significant industrial mobilization. As of May 2026, China operates 62 nuclear reactors and has around 36 or so more under construction. No other country comes remotely close to this scale of additional expansion right now. The US have 94 and France is like 56. So one may ask, if energy prices are up everywhere, why do these countries not build more? Is it only public sentiment, which yes, is very valid and a fair concern, and in democracies will carry a different weight than in countries where people do not vote on this particular topic? In China, the state acts as a planner, banker, regulator, and long-term customer all at once. Furthermore, the industry is dominated by giant state-owned enterprises like CNNC or CGN. From the outside, this may look like one giant state machine, but internally, these firms compete aggressively for projects with each other and for political favor too, which pushes construction speed. A major shift in 2026 is the inclusion of private capital. The San'ao nuclear power plant, which recently came online, I think in April 2026, is an important moment. The first time in the Chinese government allowed private entities, such as the investment arm of Geely Technology Group, to take a stake in a nuclear project. This signals that nuclear power is transitioning from state-only burden to a lucrative, investable asset class. China claims it has the industrial capacity to build up to 50 reactors simultaneously, and while the exact count varies, the manufacturing capability is extraordinary. So in the West, project takes somewhere between 10 to like 15 years. In China, they are on a scale from like 5 to maybe 7 years, maybe 8. The gap is significant and it changes the economics. Another thing that has changed is the technology adoption. While in the past China learned and copied from the larger international players, today its domestic reactor design, for example the Hualong-1, is no longer a copy. It has achieved over 90% localization. They are no longer dependent on French or American valves or pumps. They have built a sovereign industrial ecosystem. They are also investing heavily into fuel reprocessing and closed fuel cycle system. So instead of treating spent fuel as a waste, they are recycling it back into the future fuel. This is a massive differentiator in industrial policy. A major breakthrough we've seen recently is the success of the TMSR-LF1 thorium reactor in Wuwei, which uses liquid salt instead of water for cooling. And this is a total game changer because these reactors don't need massive amounts of water for cooling anymore, meaning China can now move nuclear plants into arid regions like the Gobi Desert, for example. So if you don't know, nuclear plants need incredibly large amounts of water for cooling, right? And this is why many of them are built near water, such as the ocean or lakes and so on and so on. To now be able to build inside a desert, further away from, yes, water, but also further away from the nearest population or a town is a huge deal. They're also pushing SMRs like the Linglong-1 in Hainan to dominate future industrial platforms. These are small modular reactors which could make nuclear power much easier, much cheaper and flexible to deploy in the future. So for example, while a proper reactor takes a very long time and is a huge, actually mega project, these can be built much faster and more flexible to deploy in smaller cities or in industrial zones, in remote mining areas, or as I'm sure you've heard on the news, what energy demand the future AI data centers have. And the rise of AI, more specifically AI data centers, is very important. There's an urgency to the expansion, but the urgency in 2026 is tied to a digital gamble. The East Data West Computing project, which is basically a geographical project that moves data centers from the highly populated coastal areas to the less populated inland areas in the middle or in the west of China. No matter where they are, China's AI GPU clusters are starving for steady 24/7 power that just wind and solar cannot provide steadily alone. Nuclear is a fuel for their AI ambition, and to make this coastal fuel strategy work, they are mastered the grid link, because most reactors are coastal while demand is inland. And China has built the world's most advanced ultra-high voltage transmission network. Additionally, China is aggressively buying stakes in African mines like the 𝗵𝗲 by CNNC in Namibia to ensure they aren't reliant on volatile global uranium markets. While China's export ambitions to like Pakistan and the global south are real, the real strategy is creating deep 50-year dependencies for fuel, for maintenance and for software. And so the question is, how do the people feel? Well, compared to many Western countries, public opposition to nuclear power inside China is more muted. Whether this is actually muted or has been muted by opinion suppression and information management is a different question. The Chinese information and media system simply works differently. At the same time, Beijing knows one major accident could destroy its export ambitions. Safety is absolutely a strategic priority. It always has been, but even more so. While China claims world-class safety, the regulatory process remains largely opaque, meaning the world and even the Chinese public often have to take the state's word just for it. They are using rigorous safety standards as a competitive brand to prove their reactors are as reliable as Western established providers. At the same time, with the way information is managed here in China, it is a valid point of concern that international players have, that the information about accidents, leaks, safety incidents, operational problems or regulatory weaknesses will not be communicated in a timely manner, or the information will be strictly politically managed. If I look how in general all kinds of accidents, from stabbings to larger car accidents, even others, are managed in the way how it's communicated, I personally feel this is a valid concern. Also, nuclear power still has unresolved issues around radioactive waste, storage, decommissioning cost, and water use. While China is investing into reprocessing and next-generation reactor systems, many experts argue that there are still long-term technical challenges rather than solved problems. But let's keep in mind how small a percentage nuclear energy still makes out of the total amount. This is not nuclear instead of renewables. Coal is the absolute, undisputed king, despite the discomfort that remains for the pollution and people health concerns. Solar and wind are huge too, with over 2,500 gigawatt installed. China installs more solar in a year than many countries have in total. The reason that nuclear matters in the mix and stacking capabilities, and also simply the reliability, because solar and wind do not provide the stable baseload power required by an economy built on, for example, AI data centers, robotics, and semiconductors in the future. So what we likely can expect in the next 10 years or so. In 2035, China's official target points towards roughly 110 gigawatt of nuclear capacity by 2030, and momentum suggests they could move far beyond it. You will likely see more Hualong-1 reactors, more SMRs, small modular reactors, more advanced reactor experimentation, and deeper integration between energy policy and AI-driven industrial policy. China is positioning nuclear energy not as a niche technology, but as a mature, scalable, and globally exportable industry platform, because that may very well come next, exporting it. And as you know, they say everything is made in China, and it's a correct question to ask, why in the future not also nuclear reactors? There are some small projects already now with, for example, Pakistan, but efforts with other countries have not yet progressed very well. But this is something to keep in mind as well. A country buying a Chinese reactor may depend on China for fuel, for maintenance, software engineering support, and upgrades for decades. One can argue that this will create long-term political leverage similar to concerns around telecom infrastructure or strategic ports. But at the same time, the same is true for any other country, really. I mean, look at what the US is doing with their weapon systems. So, in summary, China's nuclear program is not as much of a moral or strictly environmental decision as it is in the West, but we can see it as a mirror reflecting the country's broader national strategy, long-term planning, industrial scaling, energy security, and technological sovereignty. Nuclear alone will not solve China's energy challenges. Coal will remain deeply embedded for years. Renewable will continue exploding, but nuclear gives Beijing something it values enormously, and that is stability, predictability, and control. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you found this little video about China's nuclear energy interesting. Let me know what your stance is on nuclear energy and how you would feel if your government is starting to buy China-made reactors, and what your country is doing with the energy prices. If you liked this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could give me a like, a share, or a follow, as it really helps my channel grow. Thanks, guys.